And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's November the 19th, 323rd day of the year. Just 42 days remain to the year's over with. And it's going to be an interesting day. We'll get to that as we go along. Holidays observances. It's World Toilet Day. A clean and hygienic bathroom is essential for a healthy lifestyle. And modern plumbing ensures that we stay relatively sanitized. National Play Monopoly Day, National Camp Day, and a National Men's Day, raising awareness of the mental health issues guys face, challenges harmful stereotypes about masculinity and support the well-being of the men. GI's Day, from urban planning to disaster relief, exploring the world like never before with cutting-edge technology that brings maps to life. Well, when I said it was GI's Day, it's Geographic Information Systems, GIs. The global digital platforms that for strong analyzing and visualizing geographic data. Well, let's see, World COPD Day, Women's Entrepreneurship Day, National Kentucky Day, National Carbonated Beverage with Caffeine Day. Faithful companions during late nights and long journeys. These fizzy drinks fuel the weary, invoking renewed vigor and sharpness. National Educational Support Professionals Day, Have a Bad Day Day, International Journalist Day. All they have to do now is learn how to tell the truth. Discovery Puerto Rico Day, Enterprise Week, Artes Mundi, Book Weeks in Scotland, National Farm and City Week, Transgender Awareness Week, as if we'd be allowed to forget, U.S. Antibiotic Awareness Week, Cairo International Film Festival, one of the most anticipated festivals related to films, World AMR Awareness Week, Geography Awareness Week, Road Safety Week, American Education Week, famous people born on this date, Jodie Foster, Adam Driver, the one and only Ted Turner, Meg Ryan, Allison Janney, and Tyga, one of the hard-to-forget rappers. On that note, let's see what stories we have populating the news today. Well, a House Democrat has been slammed for a sick defense of a colleague caught texting Epstein during a 2019 hearing. Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, ridiculed as dishonest and sick after arguing from the House floor that his former law school student and colleague was only taking a phone call from her constituent when she was texting disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein during a 2019 House hearing. Republicans on Tuesday, led by Representative Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, introduced a resolution to censor Plaskett for inappropriate coordination with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. They said it reflects discredibility on the House of Representatives, and it does. This, for a man who's been dead for as long as he has, he's still causing unbelievable disruptions. Plaskett was caught texting Epstein, whose primary residence was in the U.S. Virgin Islands, during a 2019 hearing that when former Trump attorney Michael Cohen was testifying about his work with the president amid an ongoing probe into Trump's business dealings and matters tied to the 2016 election. we've got a lot of so-called elected officials who have spent taxpayer dollars trying to prosecute the president based on the unsupported rumors that he's somehow tied to Epstein. Well, 6 Democrats are urging military members to refuse illegal orders. This came out in a viral video. These lawmakers have military and intelligence backgrounds, and they released a video yesterday urging service members to refuse illegal orders. A message conservatives blasted as a call to defy President Trump and his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. It's a 1-minute video posted by Senator Lisa Slotkin, Democrat of Michigan, and viewed more than 1.6 million times. Features 6 lawmakers invoking their prior service while telling members of the military and the intelligence community that the threats to our Constitution are coming from right here at home. They seem to overlook all the undermining of our system by Democratic lawmakers. Slotkin and her colleagues have spent weeks introducing legislation to limit President Trump's ability to deploy National Guard members domestically or launch military action against narco-terrorists without congressional approval. None of that context appears in the video. Its title, "Don't Give Up the Ship." Instead, it frames the appeal as a warning to military members to stand up for our laws and refuse unlawful orders. Conservative accounts countered the viral clip, citing military law and interpreting the call to action as an alleged appeal to commit treason against the United States. Like the Democrats just released a video encouraging members of the military to commit treason and defy orders from Trump and Hegseth, according to a conservative account, Libs of TikTok. Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican of Missouri, added, at the end of the day, they're mad the American people chose Trump, and now they're calling on the military and the intelligence community to intervene. Sounds a little subversive to democracy. Well, President Trump has designated Saudi Arabia a major non-NATO ally during the Crown Prince's White House visit. Also unveiled a defense and economic partnership with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman during a White House dinner marking 80 years of U.S.-Saudi relations. President Trump welcomed guests at the official dinner and thanked bin Salman for his visit and investment in the U.S. Crown Prince gave brief remarks thanking Trump and expressing his gratitude while saying he was looking forward to a continued partnership between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. And before announcing the new designation, President Trump reflected on the nation's long relationship, recalling a 1945 meeting between President Roosevelt and King Abdul Aziz. Well, Giants Cam Scottibo responds after criticism for a viral incident with WWE stars at Monday Night Raw. New York Giants rookie running back Cam Scottibo sent a social media post on Tuesday addressing his recent controversy after engaging in a shoving match against WWE stars at the Madison Square Garden on Monday Night Raw. He says, honestly, if you don't like that I'm having a good time while dealing with a tough time, then just go ahead and unfollow and move on. I'm not able to play football and have the fun I've been having my whole life, so I'm going to do things outside the box, trying to find stuff to keep me happy. He said, y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's week and just don't talk about me if you ain't got nothing nice to say. He was criticized for engaging in the Monday night spectacle while he's rehabbing from a season-ending ankle injury, and the Giants trudged through a 2-9 season. The controversial incident began when Dominic Mysterio, one of the trio's 3 stars, started jawing with actor and comedian Andrew Schultz. While talking to Schultz, Mysterio, the son of wrestling legend Rey Mysterio, mocked the New York native, saying he was staring at the only champion the city had seen in years. Mysterio then looked at Scottibo after asking how many years it had been since the New York team won a title and said, "Can you count, Cam?" How many years? He don't know. He can't count. Then a shoving match broke out. Well, Honda's recalled 256,000 cars nationwide over potentially dangerous software glitch. Accord hybrid models from 2023 to 2025 potentially affected by this software problem. The glitch can cause a loss of power while driving, increasing the risk of a crash or injury. Recall covers a certain Honda Accord hybrids between 2023 and 2025 model years. And due to this software error, the integrated control module, central processing unit, may reset while driving, causing a loss of drive power. Fix the problem, Honda dealers will reprogram the software free of charge. The vehicle that we drive is basically a rolling computer, and it's had to have, since we've had it, we've had to have 2 or 3 software resets. Well, anti-Islam protesters and Muslims clashed in Dearborn, Michigan, after man attempts to burn the Koran. The brouhaha erupted yesterday in Dearborn, Michigan, prompting a heavy police presence. If you'll remember, the mayor is a Muslim, and Dearborn is home to one of the largest Muslim populations in the country. Recently become a target for activists who accuse it of operating under Sharia law. The clash began when Jake Lang, who participated in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, arrived on Michigan Avenue and tried to burn the Koran. Held up a lighter attempting to light the religious text on fire, but counter-protesters knocked it from his hands. Later on, Lang slapped the Koran with a slab of bacon before a counter-protester grabbed the book and took off with it. Lang and his group marched towards City Hall ahead of City Council meeting Tuesday night. Police maintained a perimeter on the sidewalks along Michigan Avenue, intervening briefly when the clash escalated following Lang's attempt to burn the book. One person was seen being arrested at City Hall, according to reports. No injuries have been reported. The chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, Curtis Hudnall, condemned the attempted burning of the Koran. And of course, the Muslim mayor was horrified. Well, Mexico's president firmly refuses President Trump's proposal for U.S. military strikes against the cartels. Mexican President Claudius Sheinbaum Tuesday rejected the idea of U.S. military strikes against cartels on Mexican soil, responding to President Trump's comments that he'd do whatever it takes to stop drugs from coming into the U.S. Associated Press said Sheinbaum said Mexico would not allow foreign military action on its territory and reaffirmed her government's position against any U.S. intervention. Of course, she didn't admit that her government is pro-cartel. Well, an illegal immigrant caused a major upset when the Department of Homeland Security reached out to ask the father of a young lady who'd been killed by an illegal immigrant if ICE could honor his daughter Katie during Operation Midway Blitz. He had some questions. He said he wasn't going to agree to anything in his daughter's name, sight unseen. But after talking with DHS and understanding the goals of the operation to enforce the laws that are supposed to protect families like his and to amplify Katie's tragic story, he was convinced her death would not be in vain. It seems she was killed January 19, 2025, in a way no parent should ever have to imagine. She was a passenger in a car stopped at a red light when an illegal alien, driving drunk at nearly 80 miles an hour, slammed into the back of their vehicle. The driver, Julio Cocobol, a Guatemalan national in the country illegally and using false Mexican identification, took the life of what the father described as a bright, loving young woman with her whole life ahead of her. According to the everything that happened that night, after violently destroying the car and the lives in it, he fled the scene without a second thought about the people he had just maimed and killed. Didn't try to render aid, didn't call for help. He just ran, leaving others to face the devastation he caused. All this happened because of a man who shouldn't have been in this country to begin with. Well, Katie's Law has gotten a lot of airplay. Well, DHS is launching a massive immigration operation in Louisiana and Mississippi. It's called the Swamp Sweep. The DHS is preparing to deploy about 250 federal border agents to Louisiana and Mississippi in a sweeping operation aimed at arresting nearly 5,000 people in those two states. That's according to the Associated Press, citing internal documents and people familiar with the operation. The 2-month initiative, as I said, it's called Swamp Sweep, is expected to begin December 1st and is going to center heavily on southeastern Louisiana. Crackdown marks one of the largest single-state deployments of immigration authorities under the Trump administration to date. Agents are expected to start arriving in New Orleans on Friday to position their equipment and vehicles and other logistical actions before fanning out into communities across the state. Operations are stretched from New Orleans through Jefferson, St. Bernard, and St. Tammany parishes, reaching north toward Baton Rouge. Additional reinforcements being planned in southeastern Mississippi, though details about that operation are somewhat limited. Well, it seems this administration is serious about cracking down on undocumented immigration. And yet, here in El Paso, when I went to our local congresswoman with an issue, she told me very clearly that her office is more concerned about helping undocumented immigrants than they are helping disabled veterans. And the problem is, from my perspective, even the VA is pro-undocumented immigrant, less pro-disabled veteran. Well, the White House is firing back after a left-wing professor said President Trump wants to resegregate the schools. The professors who appeared in a video on the American Association of University Professors YouTube page earlier this month discussed scheming against ICE operations. One speculated President Trump plans to resegregate the schools. Carolyn Lucy, professor of social sciences, University of California at Los Angeles, appeared on the November 6th episode titled ICE and Higher Education, Defending Our Communities. You know, a lot of these left-wing professors made use of various DEI and woke programs to get their degrees and the jobs that they hold. And now they want to take the country even further to the left. Trump administration demanded $1 billion from the school to settle claims of a rampant anti-Semitism, along with the demand that UCLA establish a $172 million claims fund for alleged victims of the violations of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. In exchange, they would release $584 million in taxpayer-funded federal grants back to the school. According to Lucy, who twice referred to Trump as the Orange Man, conceding to these demands would be sacrificing the sanctity of higher education as we know it in this country. But among the demands are information sharing demands, and that includes in regards to visa holders, which is to say international students are here on student visas. Well, my attitude has always been, if you are so anti-America and so pro the rest of the world, there's the border. Well, The View co-host Joy Behar says a conservative woman could win the presidency faster than a liberal. which I'm sure upsets her terribly. On the show's podcast, Behar, her co-host Sunny Hostin, and The View producer Brian Teta commented on a recent segment where they discussed whether a woman could ever become president. Hostin said she couldn't see one winning in her lifetime. Behar suggested it was possible with the right candidate. You'd need one who can actually carry on a conversation, unlike our previous female candidate. Linda McMahon questions the federal government and education after the country's longest shutdown. She says the government shutdown proves schools don't need federal oversight at all. They continued to function in spite of the Schumer shutdown. Well, apparently former President Biden made a call to Saudi governmental facility. Got sent to voicemail. I don't think they are some of his biggest fans. Well, President Trump praised Ronaldo during the White House dinner with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Says it's an honor to have him at the White House. That's Cristiano Ronaldo, don't you know, the soccer superstar. He was at the White House for dinner on Tuesday night. His appearance coincided with President Trump's hosting Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. During the black tie affair, Ronaldo, making his first U.S. appearance in almost 10 years, got a shout-out from the president. He said in a speech to a group that included Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Apple CEO Tim Cook, he said, "My son's a big fan of Ronaldo, and Barron got to meet him, and I think he respects his father a little bit more now that I've introduced you. Thank you for being here. It's an honor." Well, there's been a lot of argument that President Trump's reforms are causing the cost of energy to go up, but it actually turns out to be Biden's green energy fiasco, not President Trump's reforms. It's jacking up the electric bill. There's an ongoing battle to define a narrative about what's to blame for rising electricity prices. Some claim higher electricity prices are due to President Trump's one big beautiful bill, which curtails subsidies for cheap wind and solar installations. Others blame AI's rapidly expanding appetite for electricity. Some blame inflation. But shifting blame, usually with the help of complicit media, helps with the only thing that matters to most politicians, seizing political power. And this has been seen California Democratic Governor Newsom's trip to Belém, Brazil, for elbows with the global elite at the UN's COP30 Global Climate Conference, November 11th. Newsom, an all but declared candidate for the Democratic nomination for president in 2028, slammed the Trump administration for not attending the confab, accusing the president of handing the future to China, presumably in the category of selling solar panels embedded with secret kill switches. Then Newsom went on to say that we're not turning backward to the failed policies of the past. California is fighting for a clean energy future. Even as, according to Newsom, President Trump bends the knee to his Gulf state patrons and takes a nap as the world burns. Problem is, Newsom rarely has a clue what he's talking about. Well, a cheerleader was found dead on a cruise ship. No cause of death has been determined yet. Her body was found hidden under a bed, wrapped up in a blanket. 10 days after, a Florida 18-year-old cheerleader died in mysterious circumstances on a Carnival cruise ship in the Gulf of America. Authorities still don't have a cause of death or even how she died. Anna Kepner, a varsity cheerleader, wanted to join the Navy after graduating from high school and become a canine police officer, was found dead on November 7th. The vessel returned to port in Miami a day later, and her remains were sent to the Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy. But officials there told reporters that the doctor hadn't yet determined a cause of death or a manner of death, and the autopsy report wasn't yet available. But Carnival, for its part, said it was cooperating with the FBI that's handling the case. So we'll see I mean, if she's wrapped up in a blanket and stuffed under her bed, then I would tend to guess it's probably murder. We'll find out shortly. Well, Germany's unveiled new incentives to boost military recruitment amid a growing Russia threat. I think we're going to finally get that Third World War. Germany's coalition government, the Christian Democratic Union, Christian Social Union, and the Social Democrats, has agreed on new system incentives for voluntary military service after a heated debate last week to address the growing Russia threat to the European continent. Last time Germany got this type of mindset, we had World War II. Well, a trans-democratic lawmaker claims right-wing effort to blame for the trans backlash. Representative Sarah McBride, Democrat of Delaware, appeared to switch gears as to who's to blame for the pushback against transgender issues. Says it stems from well-funded, well-coordinated right-wing effort. And of course, helping her spread her message was the one and only Katie Couric. She spoke to the transgender lawmaker on her show, Next Question with Katie Couric, about the rollbacks on transgender policies such as banning biological male athletes competing in women's sports and prohibiting gender transition treatments for children. Somehow that's evil. The transgenders are much smarter than anyone else, don't you know? Well, that's got our news segment handled. You know, one of my favorite topics, of course, has been related to what we used to call UFOs. Now they're politically called UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. You know, this chapter of discussing mysterious things in the sky actually got its start back in the 1800s. But the most recent push came from what happened in New Mexico back in 1947. You know, in the unforgiving expanse of Nevada desert, there's a vast, desolate stretch of land that played host to some of the most important but secret developments of the 20th century. I'm talking about the area that became known as Area 51, also known as Groom Lake. What took place there would ignite imagination, stir countless conspiracy theories, and become the focal point of an entire genre of government mistrust. Everything that happened there had its beginning in the summer of 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, when a series of unusual events unfolded near the sleepy town of Roswell, New Mexico, rather. What seemed to be an ordinary evening spiraled into the beginnings of what became a massive cover-up that is still reverberating. All began on the evening of July 2nd, 1947. That date will be forever etched into history. A mysterious craft, later identified as a flying saucer, crashed on the Foster Ranch near Roswell. And what followed that crash was a chaotic sequence of events. Now, initially, Walter Haupt, the public affairs officer of the Roswell Army Airfield, because remember, in 1947, at least on July 2nd, the Air Force was not a separate branch. It was still part of the Army. Initially, military authorities confirmed a flying disc had been recovered. But within 24 hours, the official statement was revised. Even though a formal press release had been issued, it was retracted. And they said, due to ignorance on the part of, I'm paraphrasing here, military officials, what had crashed was not a UFO or a flying disc, but actually a weather balloon. Now, of course, there were problems with this story, and those problems later revealed themselves to prove this was part of a larger, high-stakes government cover-up. A lot of witnesses began to speak out. Now, the counterintelligence agents came into the area. I mean, they flooded the area, and they started threatening anybody and everybody who might know anything at all about that flying disc. A friend of my wife's had an uncle from Mexico who came over as a kid, and he used to follow Mac Brazil around and help him on the ranch. And the threats he got scared him so badly, he went back to Mexico and refuses to even visit. He was told, if you say anything to anybody about anything, we will kill you. Well, according to local witnesses who have spoken out, they just did not just see the remains of a crashed object. They saw alien bodies. A number of those were recovered from the site. And it's not just one or two witnesses that reported that. The government, of course, silenced any dissenting voices, but by that time it was too late. The seed had been planted, and conspiracy theorists would find the ground fertile for decades to come. If you've ever read my book, Beyond Roswell, and regarding my books, you can get them on Amazon. But I'm giving into pressure and creating what at the moment is loosely called the Ken Hudnall Book Club. And you'll have a site where you can buy all of them. Right now I've published over 65, and if everything I've written is published, there'll be over 80. And over the coming years, after the Roswell crash, that incident became what you might call the cornerstone of UFO lore. Eyewitness accounts, conflicting military reports, and the odd behaviors of local authorities actually fueled that fire. The U.S. military was hell-bent on ensuring that the truth would never emerge. But with every failed cover-up, though, with every leaked report and whistleblower testimony, the public's curiosity about extraterrestrial life and alien technology just grew. This is also a period when UFO sightings began to increase across the country, particularly in Nevada and New Mexico. A lot of pilots, both military and civilian, reported seeing strange things in the sky, objects that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Witnesses described craft that could stop mid-flight, change direction on a dime, or travel at speeds far beyond anything known to human technology. So you have to ask yourself, what could be responsible for these extraordinary sightings? Were they the invasions of a foreign adversary? Or was something more mysterious at play? I mean, when the government was willing to trash the reputations of pilots, both civilian and military, by claiming that they had misidentified weather balloons, you have to wonder, what's at play here? Well, this is also the Cold War period. As tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union began to escalate, so did the military's need for highly secure testing sites where cutting-edge technology could be developed without the risk of espionage. In 1955, the U.S. government chose Groom Lake, a dry, barren lake bed situated deep in the Nevada desert, as the location to build one of its most secretive and strategic facilities. This facility, of course, became known as Area 51. At the time, the base wasn't open to the public. It's still not, really. Its purpose was not disclosed to anybody outside the military. But whispers did begin to surface. Why was the base so highly restricted? It was being developed. Rumors spread the U.S. government was not only testing aircraft, but also reverse engineering alien technology been retrieved from Roswell and other crash sites. Back when my show originated in Anaheim, California, I took a busload of people to Area 51. I started advertising it on a Monday. By the time we left on Friday afternoon, I'd filled a bus. A lot of strange things were seen on that trip. Now, the design of Area 51 itself was part of the mystery. Carefully constructed to blend into the desert landscape, ensuring it remained hidden from satellites and planes and prying eyes. From the sky surrounding the base, everything was monitored. Military aircraft flew over missions to ensure no unauthorized personnel came too close. I know when I took that busload of people there, the camo guys, as they're called, which is the security force that crawls through the bushes, were there to make sure that we didn't steal a UFO and take it back to the motherland, as somebody said to me. Now, as the years passed, Area 51 continued its silent operations, but in 1989, a name came to light to forever change the public's perception of the base. A man named Bob Lazar was a self-described scientist who claimed to have worked at a facility near Area 51. And he had a number of extraordinary allegations to make. He said he'd been hired to work on alien technology at a site called S4, which is located very near Area 51. And according to Lazar, his job was to reverse engineer alien spacecraft that was stored in an underground hangar. He described seeing flying saucers, anti-gravity propulsion systems, and claimed to have been part of a team studying materials that were not of earthly origin. Now, his revelations were a shock, of course, and while some dismissed him as a fraud or a disgruntled employee, others began to question the official narrative surrounding Area 51. And during this same time period, my show was a call-in show at that time. I had a lot of people called in and said they were part of the internal security force at Area 51. They said the name of that force was Yellow Fruit. And they had all kinds of stories they would call and relate over my show. During that same time period, I found out that my show was piped into Disneyland in the evening for the night cleanup crew and the workers to listen to. Now, Lazar's testimony, along with other whistleblower accounts, opened a door to a deeper exploration of the secret base. His story became a rallying cry for those who believed that the government was hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life. Now, the interesting thing about Bob Lazar and his history, his entire educational background was sanitized. He talked about his degrees, and nobody could prove he'd even been to school. It was fascinating. Now, the more the public learned about Area 51, the more it became clear the base was central to the UFO phenomenon. Classified aircraft like the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird were tested there, pushing the boundaries of aerospace technology. But it was the rumors of alien technology that made the base notorious. Area 51 became synonymous with everything the public feared, hoped, and imagined about extraterrestrial life. The mystery surrounding the base, coupled with the strange sightings, declassified documents, and whistleblower testimonies, created an enigma that continues to captivate millions of people. Now, for decades, the public's fascination with Area 51 grew, fueled by rumors of alien technology and government cover-ups and mysterious sightings. Military denied, of course, any connection with the UFOs in the base, but a lot of folks weren't convinced. In fact, until sometime up in the 90s, the government never officially admitted Area 51 even existed. Now, in the years since Bob Lazar made all his revelations, Area 51's continued to captivate the public's imagination. People from around the world have speculated about things hidden inside that base. Was the U.S. government actually experimenting with alien technology? And if it was, what became of it? Were we actually in contact with extraterrestrials? And if the government knew the truth, why did it remain silent for so long? Well, the declassification of certain documents in recent years has only added fuel to the fire. Former military pilots and engineers and technicians have come forward to confirm some of the stories, but a lot of the truth still remains elusive. So the question still persists to this day. What does Area 51 really hide? Now, today, Area 51 stands as the epicenter of UFO and alien conspiracy theories. The secrecy, the unsubstantiated rumors, and the stories from those who've worked there have created a legend that continues to grow. For millions, the base represents the intersection of government secrecy, technological advancement, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. You know, what's interesting is close as it is to Las Vegas, those who are going to travel to Area 51 don't drive in, oh no. They're flown in on a special plane that has the windows blacked out. They're flown in out of Las Vegas. I knew several people who worked there, and they talked about having to be at the airport at dark 30 in the morning to get on that special plane. Well, as we talk more about Area 51 and this and future shows, we're going to delve deeper into the theories and testimonies and leaked documents that have emerged from Area 51. You know, from Bob Lazar's claims to the newest revelations about government UFO research, the truth about Area 51 may actually be closer than ever before. Now, as I said, this whole thing began the evening of July 2nd, 1947. War had been over not quite 2 years. The U.S. came out of it as the most powerful country in the world. And yet, we had no idea what some of the things flying in our skies were. Of course, the topic of UFOs has not become the hot button it is today. But that all changed the evening of July 2nd. There was a massive storm going on. That storm rolled over Chavez County region of New Mexico. The desert air was heavy, and if you've never lived in New Mexico, you have no idea what that means. Lightning bolts lit up the sky. At the Foster Ranch, about 75 miles north of Roswell, the ranch foreman, William Mac Brazil, settled into a small home after another day of tending livestock. At that point in time, he had no idea the next morning he'd find something so strange and so unexplainable that it would set off the greatest UFO conspiracy theory in American history. So on the morning of July 3rd, he went out to inspect the ranch after the storm, rode out on horseback. And though most of the stories about his activities don't go into detail about it, he had a couple of young men with him who actually were his shadows. Well, as he rode out, something caught his eye. He came across a vast field of metallic debris scattered across several hundred yards. And that wreckage was like nothing he'd ever seen before. There were thin strips of metal that wouldn't burn or bend, strange foil-like material that would return to its original shape when you crumpled it up, and I-beam fragments with hieroglyphic-like markings on them. Couldn't read the writing and said it was almost alien in form. He said later it was like tinfoil, but it wouldn't tear, bend, or burn. He said he didn't recognize any of the markings. He gave an interview to the Roswell newspaper in 1947 and went into detail about what he found. We collected some of that debris and rode into town, contacted the local sheriff, George Wilcox, and they sent word to Roswell Army Airfield about what had been found. July 7th, Major Jesse Marcel, an intelligence officer from the Roswell Army Airfield, was dispatched to investigate the wreckage. Marcel and a counterintelligence officer named Sheridan Cavett visited the site with Brazil. And when he arrived, even he couldn't believe what he saw. In an interview he did decades later, said it wasn't like anything I'd seen in my entire career in intelligence or aviation. He said this just wasn't from Earth. Well, he filled up the back of a military vehicle with pieces of that wreckage and brought them back to the base. That night, curious and somewhat overwhelmed, he stopped by his own home and showed some of the debris to his wife and son. Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., his son, did an interview in 1991 when he said, "I held it. It felt light, unbreakable, and the symbols, never seen anything like them before in my life." I've had the opportunity to know Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. In fact, from him, I got several pieces of what he had seen. On July 8, 1947, the public information officer at Roswell Army Airfield, Lieutenant Walter Hout, released a shocking press statement. He said the many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers. That story ran in the Roswell Daily Record. In fact, that was the main headline the next morning. Well, it was the first official U.S. government acknowledgement that a flying disc had actually been recovered. But just as quickly as that news broke, it was shut down. Cover-up began that same day. The military retracted the initial statement and replaced it with a new initial narrative. According to this new one, the intelligence officers of the 509th were so ignorant they couldn't tell a weather balloon from a flying disc. Major Jesse Marcel was told to pose with pieces of a weather balloon for a staged press photo. Real debris had already been flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio under top secret classification. Later on, years later, Major Jesse Marcel said, "I was ordered to keep quiet. But I knew then and I know now this was not a weather balloon." Well, the government, for its part, insisted the matter was closed. Locals didn't buy it, of course. Sudden retraction, military intimidation of witnesses, and the eerie silence afterward only made the story grow bigger. In the days after the crash, unconfirmed reports began to circulate that alien bodies had been recovered at the crash site. Glenn Dennis, a young mortician at the time, later recounted a chilling conversation with a nurse from the Roswell Army Hospital. She described small, gray-skinned bodies with large heads and black almond-shaped eyes. Non-human entities, she called them. She said they were lying on gurneys inside a guarded facility. Well, that nurse, disturbed by what she saw, drew sketches and passed them on to Glenn. Soon after that, she vanished. Reportedly, she was reassigned, but nobody ever heard anything of her again. Well, Roswell's town people, including Mac Brazil, were warned by government officials to stay quiet. Brazil disappeared for several days after talking to the military and came back visibly shaken. Gave a revised statement to the press claiming the material was just rubber strips and tinfoil. But locals who had spoken with him before he gave that interview knew that wasn't what he said. According to one witness, he told me before the Army got to him it wasn't from this world, and after they talked to him, he wouldn't say another word about it. That came from a neighbor, or a former neighbor, decades later. Also, decades later, the government released a report claiming the crash was part of Project Mogul, a top-secret operation using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. But even that explanation didn't answer all the questions. What about those materials that couldn't burn, bend, or break? And why all the secrecy and intimidation? How about all those eyewitness accounts of non-human bodies? Well, frankly, all the pieces just didn't fit together. Well, Roswell in 1947 wasn't just a crash site. It was the birthplace of modern UFO conspiracy theory. And that incident set off a chain of events that would lead to decades of public mistrust in the government. Formation of Area 51 is a central hub for UFO activity and the cultural obsession with the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Well, the truth was buried, but the story didn't die. It evolved and multiplied and turned into one of the most investigated and speculated mysteries of the modern world. Well, of course, the summer of 1947 was marked by the crash that would go on to fuel one of the most enduring and debated mysteries in modern history. The Roswell incident, initially reported as a simple crash of a flying disc, will later morph into a complex tapestry of conspiracy theories, governmental cover-ups, and tantalizing speculation about extraterrestrial life. We're going to talk more about details of the Roswell crash, not just as an isolated incident, but as, I guess you could say, a pivotal moment in the history of UFO research and government secrecy. We're going to examine some of the key events and witness accounts and the theories that arose from the wreckage. Well, there's no question something did crash in the desert near Roswell. And according to military reports, it was a weather balloon that had crashed. But local witnesses and first responders saw something entirely different. What they found was wreckage scattered across a huge area, pieces of a shiny metallic substance that didn't resemble anything they'd ever seen before. Now, Mike Brazil collected quite a number of those broken pieces. Some of it twisted and stretched in ways that seemed unnatural. Now, Brazil, of course, was bewildered by what he found. First, the military, he notified the local authorities. First, the military had little to say about the incident, only confirming something had crashed. And then on July 8th, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release claiming they'd recovered a flying disc from the crash site. But on July 9th, the story changed. Military retracted that statement and replaced it with new explanations. All that debris that covered all that huge area came from a weather balloon. Well, of course, that sudden shift in the story only fueled suspicions of a cover-up. Wasn't long before rumors spread the wreckage might actually have been an extraterrestrial spaceship. But the question became, what was the truth? Was it just a weather balloon, as the Army claimed, or was there something more to the story? Well, as the story began to unfold, a number of key witnesses came forward with their accounts, each adding to the complexity of the narrative. One of the first and most significant accounts came from Jesse Marcel, the G2 officer I mentioned, stationed at Roswell at the time. He was one of the first, after Mike Brazil, to examine the wreckage. His testimony going to become cornerstone of the Roswell incident. Now, his involvement in the case, of course, was as an intelligence officer tasked with investigating and reporting on the crash site. In interviews he did later on, he described the debris he found as nothing like any conventional aircraft wreckage. The materials, he said, were light, almost weightless, and incredibly tough, unlike anything he'd ever encountered before. In later interviews, he said it was very strange. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. It wasn't a weather balloon, that's for sure. Some kind of metallic material with unusual symbols on it. Well, his description of the wreckage he found and touched and handled and collected clashed with the official weather balloon explanation. He even talked about strange metallic pieces that would bend and return to their original shape, and pieces that could not be cut, burned, or damaged by conventional methods. This led to a lot of folks believing the debris was of alien origin. That theory only gained traction when Marcel suggested materials couldn't have been from any known human-made aircraft or balloon. And of course, the second witness, as I mentioned, was Glenn Dennis, a mortician at the time. He later claimed he had been involved in transporting bodies from the crash site. According to Dennis, he was contacted by the military and requested he prepare a small casket for the remains of what he described as alien bodies. In a 1989 interview, he stated he had seen what he believed to be extraterrestrial corpses at the base, adding the bodies were small, with large heads, large eyes, and grayish skin. His account became one of the most controversial and contested aspects of the Roswell incident. It was the first public mention of the possibility alien bodies had been recovered. Well, the military responded with what I would refer to as a controlled cover-up, and their reaction to the crash has long been the subject of scrutiny. While the initial press release about a flying disc suggested the military had no idea what had occurred, the subsequent retraction, the official narrative of weather balloon crash raised more questions than answers. So you have to ask yourself why there was such a drastic change in the story. Was there a deliberate effort to downplay the incident? That's what it appeared to be. A lot of researchers and conspiracy theorists believe the U.S. government knew exactly what had happened and was determined to keep it a secret. Some claim the military's cover-up operation extended far beyond simple misinformation. Witnesses such as Major Marcel and others involved in the cleanup were reportedly told to keep quiet about the details of the incident. Some are allegedly threatened with dire consequences if they talked. Secrecy surrounding the event was compounded by reports of heightened military activity in the area after the crash, with soldiers allegedly dispatched to secure the crash site and remove all the debris from public view. Well, the role of Project Mogul, a secret military operation involving high-altitude balloons designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests, has often been cited as the official explanation for the Roswell incident. According to this theory, the wreckage found near Roswell was actually from a top-secret weather balloon. But the military's retraction of a flying disc story was part of an effort to avoid revealing the true purpose of Project Mogul. Skeptics argue the balloon explanation was simply a cover-up for something far more mysterious, and alien hypotheses gained momentum as a result of contradictions in the government statement. Well, as the years passed and the Roswell incident continued to be the subject of intense speculation, a lot more questions came to light. While the official government stance remained the crash involved a weather balloon, a number of alternative theories emerged, each suggesting a different version of the events. One of the most persistent theories is the Roswell crash was a result of an extraterrestrial spacecraft, and the government's cover-up was motivated by the desire to protect that knowledge of alien life and technology. Proponents of this theory point to the eyewitness testimonies of individuals like Jesse Marcel and Glenn Dennis. Their accounts consistently mention strange materials and alien bodies. Some even argue the government's cover-up extended to a retrieval operation of alien technology, which could have been reverse engineered for military purposes. In contrast, proponents of the Project Mogul theory argue the military's activities surrounding the Roswell crash were purely related to secret surveillance operations. According to this theory, the balloon debris was part of a covert effort to monitor Soviet nuclear tests, and the government's retraction of the flying disc story was meant to protect classified information about Project Mogul. Over the years, of course, the Roswell incident became intertwined with the broader UFO phenomena, which had gained significant attention in the post-World War II era. UFO sightings were on the rise, and reports of strange objects in the sky were increasingly being taken seriously. Some theorists suggest the Roswell crash was simply one of the many incidents and represented the first instance of an extraterrestrial encounter the government chose to cover up. If you read my book, Beyond Roswell, there were quite a number of UFO crashes the government went out of its way to suppress. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll talk more about Area 51 and the potential for government cover-ups in future shows. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening.